My boyfriend's legs were paralyzed, and he was secretly ordering takeout behind my back. I couldn't bear it any longer. With a cold face I said, "Let's break up." Alex stared at me for a moment, then spoke calmly, "Fine, I'll move out tomorrow." At that moment, an anxious child's voice came from my belly. "Mom, don't break up. My dad isn't a gigolo, this is all the scheming of a reborn woman." She knew my dad would one day become a billionaire, so she engineered things to separate you from my father so she could climb up. After you broke up, she sent people to trick you into the mountains to be a breeding machine. In the end you went mad and became a lunatic. She stayed with my father through his recovery and his business startup, and eventually became the envied rich wife. Mom, your son has been reborn only once with great difficulty, please don't be foolish. I snapped back to myself and, my voice breaking, demanded of him, "You didn't even ask me why I broke up with him before you agreed. Does that mean you stopped loving me long ago?" Alex looked slightly stunned, but his tone remained calm. "If I'm like this now and you want to break up, I can understand, just say it straight. There's no need to make excuses and give reasons." I refused to give in. "You'd rather break up than even ask me a single question, and you say it's not because you don't love me anymore? You're such a jerk." Alex looked helpless. "Fine, I'll ask you, why do you want to break up?" I turned, rifled through the trash can, and pulled out the black lace panties that had broken my heart. "I never wear things like this." "Whose are they, then?" Alex frowned and thought for 2 seconds. "It's not mine either." He added seriously, "I don't have that hobby." My expression twisted for a moment, I almost couldn't keep acting, but I quickly found my composure. "You just don't love me anymore. You'd rather order a prostitute behind my back than touch me. Anyway, I'm not at fault, it's all his fault." Alex looked shocked and bewildered. "When did I ever order a prostitute? You didn't order one, so how did these panties end up at home?" Alex suddenly understood, as if he'd finally figured out why I'd flipped out, and said solemnly, "I didn't click it, I don't know how it got in the house." As he spoke, he even gave me a look of suspicion. "There are only the two of us at home. Believe it or not, I absolutely did not do that kind of thing." He paused slightly, then said helplessly, "I still mean the same thing, if you want to break up, just tell me. No need to invent reasons that don't exist." My heart cooled bit by bit, but the baby inside me was in a panic. This is bad, my dad thinks my mom deliberately framed him to turn the tables and give herself a legitimate excuse to break up. He's probably completely crushed right now. But it's fine, Mom. You secretly gave birth to me, once he becomes successful we'll ask him for plenty of child support. The two of us can eat well and live comfortably. When he dies someday, I can even inherit part of his estate. Sigh, that's not the most important thing. As long as you don't get tricked by a man and taken off to the mountains to be a breeding machine, I'll be satisfied. Otherwise I'll have a miscarriage, and you'll turn into a crazy woman. I'm so sleepy, I'll nap a bit and then get up to mourn." The son mumbled and then fell silent. My heart turned ice, I burst into a sudden, wailing cry. No one had come to the house recently, so how did that pair of underwear get in here? Why didn't Alex hear the son's thoughts too? Alex was indeed deeply hurt. I cried so bitterly, and instead of comforting me he just watched me with an expressionless face. I wiped my tears and was about to start making a scene when there was a knock at the door. Alex wheeled himself over to open it, and outside stood his junior and colleague, Felix. Felix grinned and cheerfully called out, "Hello, sister-in-law," then turned to Alex and said, "Senior, are you ready? We're leaving now." Alex nodded lightly. "Luggage? Leaving?" I looked around and only then saw a suitcase by the coffee table, and instantly grew nervous. "What are you doing?" Felix hurried to explain, "Sister-in-law, the boss wants me to accompany my senior brother to an out-of-town meeting, it'll be about a week." I asked Alex with a heavy nasal tone, "Are you coming back here?" He and I were only boyfriend and girlfriend, if he wanted to break up it would be a one-sentence thing, and there was nothing I could do about it. Felix sensed something was wrong, surprise flashed in his eyes and his mouth fell silent as if struck by cold. Alex looked at me intently, then said coldly and indifferently, "Yes." Judging by his expression, it was clear he was still bothered by what had just happened, but there was no time to sort it out now. We could only communicate by phone, or wait for him to come back and talk face to face. "Then you mean what you say?" Alex paused slightly, then added, "Seriously consider what I just told you. I will respect whatever decision you make." I was annoyed, but also helpless. Once a rift forms, it isn't so easy to mend. In Alex's mind, lace panties had nothing to do with him, they could only mean I was the one who threw them in the trash while crying wolf. It was like having your mouth full of bitter herbs with no way to spit them out, damn reborn woman. I walked Alex and Felix to the gate of the neighborhood. After the rideshare drove them away, I turned around and went to the nearby pharmacy to buy a pregnancy test. Back home, I went straight into the bathroom with the test. Predictably, 2 bright red lines. The last time I had my period was 2.5 months ago. My cycles have never been regular, and when I get anxious they can stop altogether. 2 months ago Alex had a car accident that damaged his nerves and left him paralyzed below the knees. Since then I've been in a constant state of anxiety, my appetite vanished and I even lost 2 pounds, so when my period didn't come I didn't think I could be pregnant. I never expected it to be true. Alex is actually kind and soft-hearted. For the sake of the child, he probably wouldn't force me to break up with him. I had planned to wait until our son woke up to ask who the reborn girl was, but after the little guy fell asleep he never woke up. After confirming the pregnancy, I hesitated about whether to tell Alex now or wait until he came back. I thought it over and ultimately decided to tell him immediately, trying not to give the reborn woman any chance to exploit a loophole. I snapped a photo of the pregnancy test and sent it to him. He was probably on the plane, so he didn't reply until 3 hours later. "Are you sure?" There were only words, so I couldn't read his tone. If anything, it felt cold. Suppressing my unease, I texted back, "Tried 2 different brands." I sent him a picture of the other test. The chat window showed him typing for about a minute before he finally sent a message, "What are you thinking?" I kept feeling that he wasn't happy, but then I thought of the misunderstanding before he left, so I forced myself to hold back the impulse to be angry. "Let's register our marriage first. I don't want to have a child out of wedlock." Before Alex's accident, we were about to register. After he was paralyzed in the crash, it got put off. A week ago I asked him when we'd go, and he said to wait a little longer. I knew he was depressed and listless, so I didn't push. I had planned to wait until he felt better, but instead of his mood improving, a reborn woman showed up to sow discord. This time Alex was silent even longer. It took him about 3 minutes to reply. "My leg might be like this for the rest of my life. Marriage is a major life decision, think it through before you decide. Take these few days to consider it properly, we'll discuss what to do after I get back." I didn't know whether he was speaking out of anger or genuinely concerned for me. In any case, seeing those 2 sentences set me seething. "Fine, suit yourself. If you don't want me, forget it." I raised myself on my own. Furious, I blocked him on every platform. I curled up on the sofa, staring blankly at the empty room. Memories of the happy days we once had surfaced, and I couldn't hold back the sting in my nose. Alex and I are university alumni. He is 3 years above me. Alex was the campus heartthrob. Tall, handsome, remarkably capable, and not fickle. Aside from being a bit aloof he had no faults. Compared to the outstanding Alex, I was much more ordinary. Apart from a face presentable enough, I had no notable strengths. In my first year at university, I fell for him at first sight, and shamelessly pursued him for more than 3 years, finally winning him over just before our undergraduate graduation while he was finishing his master's. After I got him, Alex not only stopped being aloof around me, he became a devoted, almost filial boyfriend. I loved him deeply, even after he became disabled with paralyzed legs. If I hadn't found those lace panties, I never would have brought up a breakup. Just thinking about the lace panties makes me sulk and seethe all over again. Damn it, why did he have to blurt it out so fast? If he'd hesitated 10 seconds, none of this would have happened. If he insists on breaking up, I'll have to accept reality. As for the little one in my belly, if I hadn't heard his heartbeat, I would have gone and had an abortion without a second thought. But the moment I remember that soft, sighing baby voice, I can't bring myself to do it. At worst, like my son said, once it's born I'll go to Alex for child support. That reborn woman would stoop to any means to steal my boyfriend. Why can't I have a baby just to disgust her? Thinking that, a dark, vengeful feeling begins to grow inside me. Half an hour after I blocked Alex, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Felix. I knew it had to be Alex. After a moment's hesitation I pressed the answer key. His low, hoarse voice came through the receiver, and I could tell he was hurting too. Baby, it's me. The tears I'd been holding back burst forth instantly. I wiped them away roughly and snapped, "Don't call me baby. I'm not your baby anymore. If you have something to say, say it. If you have crap to drop, drop it. Baby, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way." Alex paused, then continued, "I was just afraid that me and the child would hold you back. You're still young and have better choices." My tears flowed more freely, angrier now. I've never wanted it this much before, have I? His leg is broken, but it doesn't stop him from using his brain and hands to earn money for the family. I can take on all the housework. And in that department I can be the one who takes the initiative. My best friend even teased me about being love-brained. I charge forward with all my passion, and he balks. Even if it's for my own good, I can't feel grateful. Alex grew anxious. "Don't cry, it's my fault. When I get back we'll register our marriage, it's just the wedding might have to wait a bit." I sobbed. "I told you before that having a wedding isn't important. The betrothal gifts and the 3 gold items, give them to me later when you have the money." Alright, I admit I'm lovesick. Hopelessly so. Probably only if you cheated on me would I give up. Baby, don't cry. It's my fault, I'm sorry. Don't be mad. Let's go back and get the marriage certificate, okay? I didn't answer because I was too choked up to speak. 10 minutes later, under his consolation, I finally began to calm down. After hanging up, I unblocked his number and we've stayed in touch ever since. Except during meetings or when he's asleep, he replies to my messages instantly. I could clearly feel our relationship taking another step forward, as if we were back in the throes of a new romance. My heart was full of the joy of something lost and found. But then my thoughts turned to that reborn woman whose identity I still didn't know, and I became uneasy again. I had a constant feeling she would cause trouble. In the blink of an eye a week passed. The night before we were to return, Alex and I agreed we'd go to the civil affairs office the next morning to pick up our marriage certificate. He didn't get off the plane until 2 in the morning and didn't get home until around 3. I had planned to wait up for him, but by a little after 1 I was so tired I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep. I slept until I woke up naturally. By the time I woke, the sun was high. I hurriedly checked my phone, 9:15. Alex should have been home long ago, but he wasn't in bed. I climbed out of bed, ran barefoot to the living room and opened the door. Still no one. I searched the whole house and couldn't find him anywhere. I had no choice but to call him. The phone rang for a long time before someone finally picked up. I was a bit angry, but I held myself back from blowing up. "Are you back? Let's break up." He and I spoke at the same time. I thought I had misheard and asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" He repeated slowly and firmly, "Let's break up." I still couldn't believe it. Break up? Break up. In that instant, it felt as though my heart had been pierced by a sharp arrow. I couldn't bring myself to accept reality, unwilling to, yet I had no choice but to face the facts. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. What about the child? Do as you wish. If you don't want to give birth, then have an abortion. If you don't want to abort, then give birth. I'll raise the child and you can give me child support. If you don't want to raise the child, then give them to me, and you don't need to pay me child support. His tone was casual, as if he were talking about the most ordinary thing. But each word that leapt from his mouth was like a blade, piercing my heart with brutal force. Why? Actually, there's no special reason, it's just. I feel tired. When someone is utterly speechless, they sometimes laugh for no reason. I laughed for no reason just now. Tired? Alex's decisive voice came through the receiver. Yeah, you have a bad temper, you get angry at the drop of a hat, and you're especially hard to placate. I'm really annoyed now, even annoyed with myself. I don't have the time or energy to soothe you every day. So that's how it was. I admit he was right, I do have a bad temper and I'm hard to placate, sometimes even I hate myself. Maybe even if the reborn woman hadn't appeared, he and I still wouldn't have made it to the end. I laughed through my tears and said, fine, let's break up. Alex was silent for a moment, then asked, what are you going to do about the baby? You don't need to worry about the baby. I know what to do myself. I was being ambiguous. Because I didn't want him to know I was keeping the baby, and I didn't want our son, should he wake up suddenly, to hear that I intended to abort him. Alex perhaps assumed I was having the abortion, and added, an abortion can do a lot of damage, but right now I only have 50,000. I'll compensate you this much for now, when I get the commission from the next project, I'll give you another 50,000. I couldn't help but snort derisively. Fine. What else could I say? I could only concede that he was rather generous. A procedure that would cost a few thousand, and he offered me a full 100,000, much better than those men who split abortion costs with their girlfriends. Alex took a deep breath, as if holding back emotion, then spoke calmly, my legs aren't steady, I can't take care of you. I'll hire a postpartum nanny to look after you. No need, I'll hire one myself. I knew it was very likely the work of another reborn woman, but his attitude completely killed any desire in me to question it. I'll give birth to the child and discuss them later. My son won't blame me anyway. Fine, I'll give you an extra 20,000 later. I'll pack my things and move out. I'll move it myself, I don't need you to. My best friend rented a 2-room suite near her company last month. She wanted to find a girl to share the rent with, but it seemed she hadn't found the right person yet. I quickly messaged her. She said she was in talks with someone, and if I wanted to move in she'd turn that down. I said I'd move over that afternoon. She immediately cheered that she'd clean up for me so I could move in right away. Once the place was settled, I started packing at once. I packed while crying and cursing. You stinky jerk, bastard, son of a. Breakups are breakups, what's the big deal? Break up? I just slept for a bit, how did the world collapse while I was asleep? Can we not break up? Sure, having your birth mother is the most important thing, but having your birth father is even happier. Alright, I'm overthinking. This isn't even about happiness or not, this is about dying again. Holding the script but unable to change anything, I'm so useless. I feel awful and want to cry, wah. Son, don't worry, Mom won't let you disappear. And Mom knows the script too, so she's useless in the same way. I feel so terrible and want to cry as well, wah. Apart from daily necessities, most of the things in the house belonged to me, and packing them up was quite a struggle. After 2 hours of fiddling, I had only half finished, exhausted and hungry, I somehow made myself cry. Trash. I lay on the bed and cried for a while, then got up and went back to work. After clearing out the bedroom, I moved on to the living room. I was halfway through when Alex came back. He looked exhausted and worn, his eyes red, as if he hadn't slept all night. I glanced at him and looked away, continuing to pack my things. After about 2 minutes, Alex spoke up unexpectedly, no need to rush like that. Find a place for the house first before you move. I paused slightly, saying coldly, it's already been arranged. Alex didn't say another word. On the top shelf of the bookcase sat a teddy bear. I grabbed a stool and stood on it. Alex looked at me nervously. What are you doing? I snapped. Whatever I'm doing is none of your business. Alex looked at me, about to speak but stopping, and ultimately said nothing. I stood on the stool on tiptoe to reach the toy bear on the top shelf of the cabinet. Turning to come down, I met Alex's anxious, worried gaze and couldn't help the sting in my nose. After staring at him for a few seconds, my eyes reddened again. Do you even want this child or not? Alex turned his face away, his voice carrying a faint, barely noticeable tremor. No. All right, it was my wishful thinking. Angry, I jumped down from the stool. Alex visibly flinched, clearly startled. He instinctively tried to catch me, but his legs couldn't support him to stand. He quickly came to his senses and awkwardly withdrew his hands. Don't do that next time, it's dangerous. Anyway, you don't want this child, what's the difference if it's dangerous or not? This was a low stool, I was confident I wouldn't get hurt, which is why I jumped down. After all, before I discovered I was pregnant, I had jumped down from even higher steps. Alex pursed his lips. You're dangerous. I hate him for that, he's the one who found me annoying and wanted to break up, yet he puts on this act like he cares so much. As if he's the one who can't bear to let me go. Alex, I hate you. I stormed back into the bedroom, slammed the door shut with force as if to vent, then flung myself onto the bed and cried. I didn't cry for long, I calmed myself, took out my phone, and booked movers to take my luggage away. After confirming the time, I dragged all my bags to the living room doorway. Alex was still sitting in the living room, saying nothing as he watched me bustle about. I gathered everything into the living room, and Alex suddenly asked me again. It's already noon. Want to have lunch before leaving? I'll order takeout. I snapped, I'm not hungry. Alex fell silent again. After about 10 seconds, he pushed his wheelchair into the study. Tears kept welling up in my eyes. I looked up at the ceiling, wiped my tears haphazardly, then sat on the sofa to chat with my best friend. She didn't know I was pregnant and was enthusiastically trying to set me up. She said her boyfriend had a wealthy, handsome childhood friend and asked if I wanted to meet him. I no longer believe in love, I don't even have the thought anymore. Besides, there's a baby in my belly, so I absolutely couldn't bring harm to anyone, and I declined. After chatting for a little over 10 minutes, there was a knock at the door. I thought it was the moving company, so I hurried up to open it. Standing outside was Felix holding a folder. When he saw me he greeted me with a cheerful smile. Hello, sister-in-law. I brought something for my senior brother. I stepped aside to let him in. Felix glanced at the piles of luggage in the living room and exclaimed, surprised, are senior brother and sister-in-law moving? I shook my head expressionlessly. I'm moving out. Also, don't call me sister-in-law anymore. A look of astonishment crossed Felix's face, he looked at me, wanting to say something but stopping himself. At that moment Alex opened the study door and came out. Felix hurried in, handed the documents to Alex, said goodbye, and left in a rush. Alex took the papers and turned back into the study, clearly not wanting to see me. After throwing an imaginary punch at the study, I sat back down on the sofa and continued to stare into space. About 3 minutes later, Felix sent me a long message. Sister-in-law, forgive me for saying one more thing. During our business trip these past few days, senior brother has been in a very good mood. He said that once he returned he would go with you to register your marriage, and he even said that once you two register he would treat me to a meal. On our way back, senior brother was also very happy, until someone messaged him. After chatting with that person for a while, his mood inexplicably turned sour. I guess the other person might have told him something unpleasant. No matter what happened, I hope you two can talk it through properly. Please don't let a misunderstanding tear you apart. I didn't reply. About 3 minutes later, Felix sent another message. The night before we came back, senior brother and I went out drinking. He drank a bit too much and ended up crying to me, saying he didn't want to hold you back but couldn't bear to let go. He said he felt selfish, knowing he would be a burden to you yet still wanting to marry you. Sister-in-law, the boss asked around and found a very skilled acupuncture master. He said my senior brother might still be able to stand up. I don't know if he told you. The more I say, the more I babble. In short, if you both are in each other's hearts, don't let a misunderstanding make you lose each other. When I came to, my vision was already blurred with tears. I gave a bitter smile and said, "Thank you." Felix replied, "You're welcome," and didn't try to persuade me any further. I hesitated a long time between asking Alex and walking away. In the end I gave up. I know Alex too well. He's not someone who makes decisions lightly and then changes them easily. If I went to ask him now, chances are he'd still say no. Wouldn't that be humiliating? Totally unnecessary. I sat on the sofa, my mind a blank, waiting. Suddenly the doorbell rang. It startled me and I hurried to open the door. I was so rushed that I tripped over my luggage and fell hard to the floor. Ah! A sharp, stabbing pain shot through my abdomen. I pushed myself up into a kneeling position on the floor, clutching my stomach tightly. Why does it hurt so much? Am I dying again? God, I'm just a baby, don't be so cruel to me. Mom, save your baby son, I'm about to die. The study door was opened, and Alex hurriedly and frantically shifted his wheelchair. In his rush he clipped the wheel on the corner and, by the force of momentum, toppled to the ground. He had no time to get back into the chair. Using his hands to support himself, he scrambled desperately toward me. I don't know how long later when I came to on a maternity ward bed in the hospital. I was stunned for 2 seconds. When I came to, my first act was to touch my belly, crying out in panic, "The baby!" "Don't worry, baby, you're fine." Alex's voice came from beside me. I turned my head to look at him, while carefully checking my body. Apart from a dull ache in my lower abdomen, there was no other discomfort. But I couldn't be sure the child was still in my belly. Just as I was about to press the call button for a nurse, my son's inner voice sounded. "Mom, your son nearly died, be more careful walking next time." I let out a long, relieved breath and said to myself, "Don't worry, baby, Mom will be careful next time." Good, but there better not be a next time. This little one is already terrified to death, boo-hoo. There won't be a next time. If there is, the two of us mother and daughter might as well reincarnate together. What do you want to eat? I'll order takeout. Alex suddenly cut in. I didn't want to look at him and turned my face away. I don't need your care. I'll hire a caregiver, you should go. As for the child, I'll keep him. You just need to give me child support on time from now on, I won't let him disturb your life. After a suffocating silence, Alex spoke almost mercilessly. You'd better think it through before deciding. A child will only be a burden to you. I was furious, spun around wanting to shout at him, then remembered we were in a hospital and hurriedly lowered my voice. I admit it, no matter how I try to avoid it, the existence of this child will inevitably affect your life to some extent. But he's already 3 months along now, and, who knows, he might already have developed a sense of self. I grabbed his hand and placed it on my lower abdomen. Remember, he's my child, none of your business. Whether I choose to have this baby is not up to you, you have no right to decide for me. Alex watched me in silence. My son was indignant. That awful dad went too far. Breaking up with my mom would be bad enough, but making her get rid of me? Since you're heartless, don't blame me for being ruthless. I wish you a son, tall and handsome, and I curse you to be infertile in the future but still have a house full of grandchildren. Alex's eyes widened bit by bit, a look akin to panic forming. He stammered, "Ava, is there someone talking in your stomach?" You actually heard me scolding him. Humph. So what if I scold him? If you want me dead, can't I at least insult you a few times? Stinky dad, stinky dad. I'm cursing you, you stinky dad. I wish you infertility and a house full of grandchildren. Alex's expression twisted. Ava, there's really someone talking inside your stomach. I was equally surprised and shocked. My son held a grudge against Alex for asking me to get rid of him. He hurled a stream of vicious curses at Alex for several minutes before he yawned and fell asleep. If he hadn't been so drained, I suspect he might have kept on cursing. Alex's face shifted from terrified at first, to ashamed and helpless, and finally to a wry, helpless amusement. Once he was sure my son wouldn't wake up to keep berating him, Alex looked at me with a complex expression. Could you hear his voice before? I was furious too, so I refused to engage and yanked my hand free, turning away from him alone. He's not a monster, he's my son. I won't let anyone hurt him. Whoever dares to hurt him, I'll fight them tooth and nail. Alex rolled the wheelchair to the spot closest to the hospital bed, then rested his head against my waist, his voice choked. Baby, I'm sorry. I don't want to break up with you. I don't want to lose our child. Forgive me this once, please, give me another chance, won't you? I hate that I'm so spineless. He was clearly being so unreasonable, yet as soon as he showed a bit of kindness or weakness, I couldn't help but feel my heart ache and soften. Alex, I'm not your doormat you can call up and discard at will. And don't call me baby, I'm not your baby anymore. He choked up again. I can't bear to break up with you either, but I'm afraid I may never be able to stand on my own, afraid that my child and I will always be a burden to you. I don't want to hold you back for the rest of your life. I sneered coldly, so you force me to break up when you know I don't want to, making me suffer is your way of being kind to me? Alex was full of remorse. I thought a short pain was better than a long one. And I didn't know I'd recover, let alone become a billionaire. If I'd known, I'd never, not in a million years, have broken up with you. Baby, can you give me one more chance? To be honest, although I was angry, whether from emotion or reason, I didn't want to break up with him. After all, he's going to be a billionaire someday. Our son is still waiting to inherit his fortune. I turned around and glared at him angrily. Felix said that on the way he brought you back, after chatting with someone his mood suddenly sank. What's really going on? Tell me clearly. Alex lowered his gaze. A man named Simon added me as a friend, and he told me that you and he slept together. He sent me your chat logs. You said you weren't leaving me out of pity and because you felt awkward bringing up a breakup. And besides what? He also sent photos of you eating with him and going to a hotel. I was so angry I could almost smoke. First of all, Simon is just a client I'm assigned to, we have no personal relationship. On Saturday night he suddenly said there were some details in the contract that needed further discussion and asked to meet me at a restaurant. He's the client in charge, I couldn't risk offending him, so I met him. Also, after I explained things to him I went home. When did I ever go to a hotel with him? Alex took out his phone and flipped through his chat history with Simon to show me. The screenshots Simon had sent did indeed show my avatar and nickname, but just because the avatar and nickname are the same, does that prove the person chatting with him was me? Alex thought for 2 seconds, then shook his head hard. That's more like it, set the same avatar and nickname, just a bit of fiddling. As for the photos of dining and checking into a room, the one eating is me, the one checking into the room is definitely not me. Simon secretly photographed me eating from the front, I admit that was me. But the person who checked into the room with him is shown only from behind. The other person was similar to me in height and build, and wore the same outfit I had on that day, so the silhouette looked almost identical to mine. Put the two photos side by side, and even if I were him I'd instinctively think they were the same person. Besides, there were chat logs to back it up. You can only say Simon went all out to frame me. After the underwear incident, I bought a hidden camera online and placed it in the living room, tucked inside that teddy bear. I worried Alex wouldn't believe me, so I took out my phone and pulled up that day's surveillance for him to see. The footage showed I left at 5:30 in the afternoon and was home by 8 that night. Subtracting the time spent on the round trip, there was only time for a meal. There was absolutely no way I could have had time to book a room with Simon. After watching, Alex looked even more guilty. He grabbed my hand and buried his face in it. I'm sorry. I was furious and hurt, but then I thought of what he'd said before and couldn't help laughing through my anger. You said I could have the baby and you would raise it, aren't you afraid the child might not be yours? Alex said in a muffled voice, I know the child is mine only because you told me. Heh. I told Alex everything I learned from my son. For example, the existence of the reborn woman, that he will recover in the future, that he will become a tech magnate worth billions. And how, after we parted ways in our previous lives, we each followed completely different fates. Alex didn't gloat over the fact that he would recover or become a billionaire tycoon. Instead, he was plunged into deep remorse for having married the reborn woman in our past life. Regarding the events of the previous life, the actions of the reborn woman were indeed more hateful, but I also bear a large share of the responsibility, especially myself. Not speaking up and failing to communicate properly were also major reasons our relationship fell apart. If it weren't for the spoiler of our son's heartfelt words in this life, we most likely would have repeated the same path as before. Speaking of our son, the little guy's vitality is very strong. I met the discharge criteria 3 days later. I still admit that I am indeed hard to coax. Even though I had already decided to forgive Alex, I still stayed angry for a whole week. A week later, after I finally cooled down, our son woke up again. Since the last time Alex had placed his hand on my belly and heard the baby's heartbeat, he too could unconditionally hear the child's voice. The little guy, the moment he woke, began grumbling and cursing Alex. Alex knew he was in the wrong, though annoyed, he could only grit his teeth. But the little one held grudges fiercely and had no intention of letting up. He kept insulting Alex for a full month. At last Alex couldn't take it anymore and threatened him, saying that if he kept cursing, once he was born he wouldn't be given any toys or snacks. Only then did the little guy reluctantly stop the curses. During this time, Alex and I took some time to go get our marriage certificate. Alex originally wanted to buy a diamond ring, but that stuff doesn't hold value, so I asked for a gold ring. On the day we got the certificate, we treated Felix to a meal and agreed that when we have the wedding we'll invite him to be a groomsman. With our son's spoiler, we also identified the reincarnated woman who tried to drive a wedge between us. She was an intern at Alex's company named Vivian, and had once been a junior apprentice of Alex's. Simon, of course, was the person she had arranged to seduce me. After Alex and I got our certificate, Simon still tried to hit on me, and Vivian kept stirring trouble several times. It wasn't until Alex caught them in the act that they quietly resigned and left. Although she had resigned, she still wouldn't quiet down. Once, on my way to a prenatal checkup, I was nearly run over by a woman riding a shared electric scooter. Although she wore a mask and a hat, I still recognized her as Vivian from the jealousy and resentment in her eyes. She sped off quickly, and since I had no proof that she meant to do it, I let it drop. After that, Alex hired a sturdy older woman who stayed by my side and looked after me every step of the way. While I was in labor, Alex underwent professional acupuncture treatment. 3 months later, sensation gradually returned to his legs. 6 months later, he could stand up with the help of a cane. A year after that, he could walk with the aid of a cane. A year and a half later, he was finally able to discard the cane and walk on his own. On our son's 3rd birthday we held a wedding. It wasn't particularly grand or lavish, but it was warm and comfortable. It was on that very day that Vivian actually conspired with traffickers, attempting to abduct our son in the confusion. Fortunately, Alex and I had been prepared. Security apprehended the traffickers on the spot. Under the police's rigorous interrogation, the traffickers soon betrayed their accomplices, including Vivian. When Vivian was arrested, she kept shouting that she had been reborn and that she was the protagonist. Except for Alex and me, everyone treated her like a lunatic. Of course we couldn't let her actually pretend to be insane to avoid prison. Fortunately her acting wasn't convincing enough, so she wasn't declared mentally ill. It's also worth mentioning that the son became a normal little baby after he was born. But Alex hadn't forgotten the things he said while he was in my womb. I can be certain that if he ever dares to act like a brat in the future, he won't escape Dad's loving education. A chaotic, bedlam-filled family life with kids and dogs, completely predictable.